Hi, thank you all for being with us. Gracias. And a huge thanks to Hazal Mossadegh of Paminar Press and Tracy Grinnell of Litmus Press, among others, for incredible work to bring us together in support of freedom of expression and critical dissent in solidarity with Palestine and with Palestinians in Gaza, especially, who are enduring confinement, destruction, death, hunger, disease, and displacement in unimaginable ways. As someone of Galician ancestry and of Galician and Irish ancestry as well, whose studies in poetic creative work have long involved the Shoah in Ukraine and the Civil War in Spain, I know in my heart what silence caused then and what it causes now. We must join others speaking up when innocent lives are being crushed, and not because of where they are, and Gazans can't leave, or what they have done, but because of who they are. What better way than through poetry? Poetry looks to the future, even if it speaks of the past. It looks ahead to the reader, to tomorrow. And I hope for better tomorrows soon, and peace, a ceasefire, and justice for Palestinians. Now you're going to hear 5 marvelous poets, all based in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal, all lauded and key to our Canadian poetic culture, our Montreal poetry culture, and they'll be reading in this order. Oana Avasilichioaei will go first. She's a poet, sound performer, and translator from French and Romanian who works between, across, and within the borders of listening, languages, geographies, histories, materialities, and systems of thought. She'll be followed by Darby Minott Bradford, a poet of radical poetic designs and Black untold histories, and a freelance translator from French. Klara du Plessis, who will read third, is a Canadian-South African poet, scholar, artist, and independent curator of past and current poetic voices, live and recorded in multiple languages. She's a creator of community, a freelancer, and a bold actant in our poetry community. Liz Howard, who will read fourth, is a poet, educator, and editor. She was born and raised in Northern Ontario on Treaty 9 territory and is currently assistant professor of creative writing at Concordia University here in Tiohtià:ke. Eli Tareq Bechelany-Lynch is a Lebanese-Canadian writer, author of 2 books of poetry, and an unceasing activist as well for justice and social change. They'll appear by video with us today as in person. They're currently in Ottawa in front of the Canadian Parliament in a vast demonstration to press our government to advocate for a full ceasefire in Gaza. And please donate to humanitarian aid to Gaza. In Canada, I suggest Islamic Relief Canada and the Humanitarian Coalition Canada. You can find them on the internet easily, but I'll put them up in the chat on YouTube as well. And I'll turn you over now with thanks to Oana Avasilichioaei.
Thank you. I will first read a poem from my own book, Liminal. It's called Overpass, and it is an imagined correspondence between my own words and the words of Paul Celan and Nellie Sachs, taken from their own correspondence. With what words? With what silence? We begin always in the dark, a dim, rough cabin forested on the frontier at the crooks of the mountain pass. Await night to cross. The ice melted. The lake is unfeasible, so too the river, the sky taut. All the unanswerable questions in these dark days, this ghostly mute, not yet. Her countenance betrays signs of distress, even panic. I say my goodbyes, not having the faintest idea of what it means. We leave by truck, car, bus, on foot, by plane, by inflatable boat, by train. Decades pass. Have we arrived? Then you came with the holy word. Landscape of his language still moist and dripping from the source. We cross into the literal out of doors of foreign, its Latin forest, travel vulnerable and clumsy to the new species city. Enter its orb. We are not special. The city constellates through us with its intersecting entities, the city noisy, invisible, dying, groping, flourishing, and extravagant. With time outside its doors, inside the elements, we harden. Word gifts. You have your hands. You have the hands of your poems. Language besets us. A parapet at first, then a colonizing sea, eventually a recognizable landscape, its weather balmy and volatile. So friendly and kind to me that one almost forgets one is in an insane asylum. The insanity is a necessity we have to pass through. The asylum will be or will not be waiting for us on the other side, which before we know it has become our side, which before we know it has given meaning to sides. My signature is valid again. On one side, I practice signing the name from the old country until its signature becomes. On the other, I mime the sign of a way. It has been black for us for so long, I felt for you through countries. Through the countries, tongues murmuring, glimmering, not silent, even when cut off. Thank you for your lines, for the reminder of that light. And the second poem I'll read a page actually from Mahmoud Darwish's book, In the Presence of Absence, translated from the Arabic by Sinan Antoun. Exile is not journeying. It is not leaving and returning, nor is it to dwell in longing. It may be a visit, or a waiting for the effects of time, or a departure of the self for another, to know and be in harmony with, for the self to return to its shell. Each exile has its character, and every exile his characteristics. In exile, you train yourself to contemplate and admire what is not yours. Exile edifies the body. The beauty of form enchants you, even when meaning is incomplete, for perfection is the awareness that something is missing. Statues that glorify the past, statues ready to leap from emotions of identity to the identity of emotions, and statues that liberate tomorrow from aesthetics and nature from the strict order of imagination. Beauty is grandeur. But because you grew up in the countryside, you side with the trees reflected on the river and with doves flying between land and sky. You pause for a long time before an iris that sprang up alone, nowhere near a pot. Not because, like you, it is a stranger among flowers, but because it relies on itself in growing on its own. Exile is the poet's journey through a journey within a journey, but figurative language keeps looking back. And looking back, they say, is one of the attributes of exile. Thank you.
And now we've got Darby Bradford with us. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is called A Loud Noise in the Heavens. It's taken from Nat Turner's Confessions, just so you know. Not a poem, but word about Stono, Lukongo, and Jemmy 1740. Not a poem, but word about Caesar, and Prince, and Cuffy, and Fort George, ye happy spirits, to the ground in NYC 1741. Not a poem, but word of Gabriel's, Richmond, death, or liberty, gallowed by Farah, washed by the storming 1800. Not a poem, but word of Delonde and Andry. The German coast, 300 storied, strong, and yet 1811. Not a poem, but the word about Southampton. Lilies, gnats, new songs, field calls to lift and fatherlands by. Not a poem, but about the hundreds, fatherlands put down, heads mounted like signs. Not a poem, but stuck up along the road. For the rise done felled, at least 51 not poor whites, and children on both sides. Not a poem, but like a poet's poet, a deterrent's deterrent. I had a dream that woke me up at dawn, convinced I had forgotten about all these other blackhead signpost roads all over the place. I woke up meaning to list them here, to dapple the map with them. As if there's a blackhead signpost road through Green, or the one just outside Wilmington, former Jerusalem, dead center of town, right into Cortland, an unmissable thing along the poor side of the lake. But really it's just the one, technically, shortened to Signpost Road a couple of years ago, but the full name's still there when you Google. And really it's way too much if you go looking for the others. It's the maybe 23 heads for a start, not notable enough for their own street in New Orleans. Is that better or worse? It's the nearly 100 heads along River Road, parish law. It bears repeating, like crows on long poles. Common enough a warning, the idea gets tired as the afternoon wears on. All over again, the idea works over a sandy loam, kitchen intel, cut harvests, mobile holdings, short staple. The idea counts the 120 or so black people killed in the aftermath of that one solar eclipse in Southampton. And this time the idea counts probably just the one head. Counts a blacksmith to mark the crossroads of the rebellion. Maybe named Alfred, maybe not much part of the rebellion at all. We don't know now, but they painted the pole black after the head decayed. Blackhead signpost. And when the emergency response system came along, they gave the road its name. And generations of people traveled that same road with that same name for decades. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Klara de Plessis. I'll be reading from South African authors Breiten Breitenbach's book, Oorblijfsel, Voiceover. It's a bilingual collection of self-translated poems written in friendship to Mahmoud Darwish. Identity is gospel talk, Mahmoud. When, as in a dream, you hear what others tell and imagine you understand, exist. To be is to move through a spectrum of volcanoes and the spectacle of wars and poetry in catastrophic times. Blood and blood and blood in your hometown. In my hand and yours, in the almond blossom, the banana peel, the infant's milk, the light and the shade, the kernel wheat, the pinch of salt. Sleepless snipers never miss. Blood and blood and blood. This earth is smaller, more silent, more black than the blood of its children. Here in the verged north, where earth is gleamed green right up to the dreamt coast of longing, and the blind singer fingers the wind for the mating call of domed dead whales, I still hear you. To be is to keep moving through the declensions of dying, looking for magical scripts in the ash, for the line that may spit a perfect metaphor past the wrong taste of tongue rotting in its mouth. And look, The heart is fire-spewing silence, for to walk on scorched stilts through the land is to preach the holiness making of nothing. I say, I will protect our dreams like mirrors, for we have seen the faces of those who will throw our children from the windows of this final room. Above the ruins, a mocking moon laughs like a madwoman with a broken ladle gazing at her wrinkling face in the well. You say, do you see stories of stars in the unseeingness? They are neither ligaments nor lingams of stone or bone or quartz, but poets' voices. Mirrors will be suspended from those songs, for where shall we go after the last greening? Where do birds fly after the final home? Where do plants sleep after the ultimate assertion? We will write our names in scarlet. We will chop off the song's hand so that it may be fulfilled in flesh, and our blood may plant an olive. O life, go devotedly, so that I too may witness your imperfecting. The eye is such a dog that I splotched your fraying robe with the red from my fractured glass. Here we'll live, where the closing earth excretes us through the last throat-tight passage with torn-off limbs. And you say, to drift through a vagrant land of decay is to say the sacred tidings of all emptiness, the way the blind poet sings of whales, mantled as jewels, and howls under moon. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Liz Howard, and I'm going to be reading a poem by Palestinian poet Fadwa Tuqan, as translated by Charlie Huntington, called I Found It. I found it on a beautiful sunny day. I found it after great loss, fresh, verdant soil, wet and flourishing. I found it as the sun passed over palm trees, scattering over the grassy gardens its golden bouquets. It was an April generous and fertile in seeds, warmth, and the spring sun. I found it after great loss, an evergreen fresh bough in which birds seek refuge, so it lodges them in its protective shade. If a violent wind crosses it someday, thunderous and trembling, it bends slightly, twists before the wind lightly. As the thunderstorm dies down, the limb levels out, its heavy water, leaves quenched of thirst. Its pliant body did not shatter under the wind's hand. The branch remains as it was. As if its trials did not break it, it laughs with the beauty in all that it sees, in the radiance of a star, in the lightness of a breeze, in the sun, the dew, and the clouds. I found it on a beautiful sunny day, after loss, after a long search, a lake clear and tranquil. If at times its pure heart was lapped at by the wolves of mankind, or the winds of fate played in the lake and muddied it briefly, it cleared with the clarity of a crystal and became the moon's face, a pool of blueness and light where the guiding stars bathe. I found it. Oh, you tempest, blow and mask the sun's face with clouds as you like. And you days turn my fate from sunny and cheerful to sullen and gloomy. Even then, my lights do not fade, and all the darkness that has been extending blackly through my life, unfolding in night after night, is gone, buried in the grave of the past, since the day my soul found itself. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Hi, my name is Tareq Bechelany-Lynch. I'm a Lebanese writer living in Montreal, جوجاكي. اليوم رح اقرا قصيدة من إتل عدنان اسمه Arab Apocalypse. Today I'll be reading a section from إتل عدنان's Arab Apocalypse. ورح غير كلمات رح يكون في غزة وفلسطين بالقصيدة. So I'm going to be changing a couple words just to make sure to include Gaza and Palestine. So this is 3. The night of the non-event, war in the vacant sky, the phantom's absence, funerals, coffin not covered with roses, unarmed population, long. The yellow sun's procession from the mosque to the vacant place, mute taxis, plain-clothed army, silent hearse, silent music, Palestinians with no Palestine. The night of the great Inca did not happen. Engineless planes, extinguished sun, fishermen with no fleet fish, with no fleet, with no sea, with no fish sea without fishermen. Guns with faded flowers, Che Guevara reduced to ashes, no shade. The wind neither rose nor subsided. The Jews are absent, flat tires. The little lights are not lit. No child has died. No rain. I did not say that spring was breathing. The dead did not return. The mosque has launched its unheeded prayer, lost in the waves. The street lost its stone. Brilliant asphalt, useless roads, dead army, snuffled in the street to shut off the gas, refugees with no refuge, no candle. The procession hasn't been scared. Time went by, silent phantom. Stagnant tide, weightless blackness, motionless cold around a non-existent fire. Car with no driver, Ashrafiyye Hamra words under lock. Fear with no substance, windowless walled city, a dead man forced to go home on foot, a bullet belly. Prayer in the mosque, black procession tinier than ants. Allahu Akbar. Cybernetics of doom broken machine, a breeze but no garden. Too much awaited enemy has not come. He ate his yellow sun and vomited. Time, lemon crushed by a wheel grating under funerals. Between Gaza and Palestine there is sea. The night is not of war. Nothing is crushed by the silence. Guns are rusting in travel bags. Revolution. من المية للمية. Palestine Arabiyya. Free, free Palestine and ceasefire now. Thank you.
Thanks, Eli. Thanks, all the Montreal poets, and to the listeners. I'm going to close for us with a very short poem by Greek poet Yanis Ritsos, translated by Minott, from a book of his from the early 80s, I think, called Subterranean Horses. It's just called The Fundamentals. Clumsily, with thick needle, thick thread, he sews the buttons on his coat. He speaks to himself. Did you eat your bread? Sleep well? Were you able to speak? To extend your arm? Did you remember to look out the window? Did you smile at the knock on the door? If it's always death, he's come late. Freedom always comes first. Thank you. And all solidarity with Palestine and ceasefire now.